So the Gypsy King has responded to Dillian Whyte. Whyte has been making some pretty disparaging remarks about Tyson Fury following Fury's win over Francesco Pianetta on the weekend. So Dillian Whyte put this message on social media. He said, "Embarrassing bunch of cowards. At the Bronze Bomber, at the Gypsy King 101. Let's go chumps. Hashtag clowns." And the Gypsy King responded by saying, "Cowards, it could have been you, but someone didn't want to fight the final eliminator versus Ortiz. Did you, coward? So that's why you're not fighting Wilder. Also, let's face facts here. You struggled with Derek Chisora, and you should have lost that by at least 4 rounds. Then Joseph Parker nearly knocked you out in round 12. You ran away from White Rhino all night. What have you ever achieved? Oh, I remember. You got sparked by Anthony Joshua for the British title, didn't you? The facts are, you're just a dosser for Eddie Hearn, hoping you might get something from the leftovers of Anthony Joshua's plate. And remember who you're talking to, the Gypsy King, the man who has done everything that you could only dream of. I know you're a shithouse dosser. Enjoy being a workman for Eddie." So that is the response of the Gypsy King, Tyson Fury, to Dillian Whyte, calling him out and goading him and I guess insulting him over the past couple of days. Now, the stuff that the Gypsy King has said here is debatable, a lot of the stuff. Let's look through it. First of all, he said it could have been you fighting Wilder, but you didn't want to fight Ortiz. Well, that's not exactly true, because Dominic Breazeale is the WBC mandatory. Despite the fact that Dominic Breazeale was ranked lower than Dillian Whyte, Dominic Breazeale has become the mandatory for Deontay Wilder. The only mandatory who is going to get the opportunity to fight Deontay Wilder possibly this year, because it's looking unlikely now, possibly this year, would be Dominic Breazeale. But even the Breazeale fight looks like it might get pushed back. And Wilder won't have to fight Breazeale if he gets past Fury until the new year. Okay, the winner of Whyte Ortiz, if Whyte had gone through with that final eliminator, they would be the second mandatory. So they would have to wait for their mandatory shot after Breazeale got his mandatory shot. So potentially, the winner of Whyte Ortiz could have been waiting over a year for their shot, maybe more. Just look at Alida Alvarez as an example. He was WBC light heavyweight mandatory for Stevenson's title for 2 years. That could have been Dillian Whyte if he'd gone through with the Ortiz fight. He could have fought Ortiz if he beat him, waiting for 2 years and still no shot. Dillian Whyte wanted a guarantee from the WBC. He said, okay, I'll fight Ortiz if you make me the first mandatory if I beat Ortiz. Not Breazeale, me. I'll be the first mandatory if I beat Ortiz. If you do that, I'll fight Luis Ortiz. This is what Dillian Whyte said. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a perfectly reasonable request, given the fact that Dillian Whyte has fought higher level opposition than Dominic Breazeale in his last few fights. And he's been fighting WBC sanctioned bouts. And he was ranked higher than Dominic Breazeale. So all of that, as far as I'm concerned, makes it perfectly reasonable for Dillian Whyte to say, okay, I'll fight Ortiz as long as you make me the first mandatory, not the second mandatory, because I don't want to have to be waiting 2 years or however long to get my shot. I want my shot ASAP. That's a reasonable request. So, but you know, the Gypsy King's going along with a certain narrative out there about Dillian Whyte and Ortiz. Then he says, you struggled with Chisora and should have lost that by at least 4 rounds. That's straight BS. 4 rounds? It was a close fight. Anybody saying that fight was a robbery and Chisora blatantly won it, they either don't know how to score a fight or they've got some serious agenda behind what they're saying. No, that was a close fight. The first time I watched the fight, I thought Chisora won it by a point. When I watched it again a few weeks later, I actually thought Dillian Whyte won it by a couple points. But it was one of those kind of fights. It could have gone either way. If you had Chisora winning by a point or 2, no problem. If you had Whyte winning by a point or 2, no problem. But when you're talking about somebody won it by at least 4 rounds, come on. You can't take that kind of thing seriously. It was a close fight. So that is what that is. Then he said, you ran away from the White Rhino all night. Oh dear, that's BS. That's nonsense. Joseph Parker nearly knocked you out in round 12. Yeah, Parker did nearly knock Dillian Whyte out in the 12th. That is a fair comment. But at the same time, Joseph Parker is a former world champion. I mean, Tyson Fury weren't trying to fight Joseph Parker, or he weren't even trying to fight Dillian Whyte in his comeback, to be fair. So, yeah, Joseph Parker did nearly knock him out in the 12th, but that's what happens sometimes when you're fighting at a high level. You can get clipped. I mean, let's not forget, Tyson Fury was dropped by Steve Cunningham, was dropped by Nevin Pikage, had a gift decision over John McDermott in the first fight. Tyson Fury could have already had an official loss on his record if the referee in the first McDermott fight wasn't intimidated by Tyson Fury's dad. And I don't mean Tyson Fury's dad deliberately tried to intimidate him. No. But the referee was scared of John Fury. That's what I saw. I saw a guy, because didn't he fight John Fury when they were professionals, the referee, and got beat by John? Whatever. People need to explain to me how Tyson Fury managed to get the decision in that first McDermott fight. A lot of people will tell you, a lot of neutral observers will tell you Tyson Fury should already have a loss on his record from that McDermott fight. Just being real. And then Tyson Fury says here, you were knocked out by Joshua, or sparked by Joshua in a British title fight. Yes, that's true. He was knocked out by Joshua in a British title fight. Then he says you're just a dosser, hoping you might get some leftovers from Joshua's plate. And obviously, Dillian Whyte does wish that he'd been the heavyweight champion, like the Gypsy King has been. Of course. Of course, the Gypsy King went over to Germany and wrestled the titles from Vladimir Klitschko. Obviously, Dillian Whyte wishes he could have done something like that. But Dillian Whyte has never had a world title fight yet. He's never had the opportunity yet to fight for a world title. And everything Dillian Whyte has done so far has certainly qualified him, if we're talking about from an ethical, from a moral standpoint. He deserves a world title shot. But boxing is not run on ethics and morals. Boxing is run on politics and money. That's what boxing is. So the politics don't really sit very favorably at the moment for Dillian Whyte. Nobody is rushing to give this man a title shot right now. It is what it is. There are other guys like Fury leapfrogging him in the WBC rankings. Actually, I'm not sure where Fury is in the WBC rankings, but I know he's in the top 10. He might be still below Dillian Whyte in the WBC rankings, but he's managed to leapfrog Dillian Whyte to a WBC title shot. We know that. And to be honest, you can't really blame Wilder. I'll be real, because he could take on Dillian Whyte for, $7 million? Or he could take on Tyson Fury for, 10 million, 12, 50? I don't know what he's getting paid for it, but he could take on Tyson Fury for a lot more than he's getting to fight Dillian Whyte. So you can't blame Deontay Wilder for doing that. It's a bigger fight, it's higher profile, it's more money. And the WBC are willing to sanction it. I think legitimate questions have to be asked to the WBC in terms of how they can rank Tyson Fury in the WBC top 10 or top 15 after the Sefer Fury fight. How is that possible? I know now he's fought Pianetta, but he was ranked in the WBC top 15 after the Sefer Fury fight. What on earth is going on there, WBC? And again, this is a man in Tyson Fury who's never fought for a WBC world title before. He might have fought for some WBC regional belt, I can't remember now, but he certainly never fought for a WBC world title before. So how is it the WBC can rank this guy in their top 15 when he beat the second best cruiserweight in Albania, and that's it? Legitimate question. But overall here, let's look at it. Overall, Tyson Fury has had a more successful career in terms of what he's won than Dillian Whyte. There's no question about it. Tyson Fury handled Derek Chisora the second time around with ease. In fact, he handled Derek Chisora both times much better than Dillian Whyte did. Those are the facts. Yeah, he definitely handled Chisora both times much easier than Dillian Whyte. And other than Dillian Whyte, other than Derek Chisora, how many common opponents do they have? The Gypsy King and Dillian Whyte. I can't think off the top of my head how many common opponents they have. Probably not many. And the common opponents which they do have are probably inconsequential journeymen. You know. So anyway, let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Gypsy King responded to Dillian Whyte. I remember a tweet Dillian Whyte put out last week or a few days ago where Dillian Whyte said, "Let me not talk about what happened last time we sparred. He knows." It was either in an interview or it was something Dillian Whyte posted on social media. But for those of you who don't know, Dillian Whyte and the Gypsy King did spar years ago. Yeah, Dillian Whyte went up to the Gypsy King's training camp. He stayed with the Gypsy King and they were friends at this point. And this was when Peter Fury was still working with Tyson. He stayed with them. He said they were cool and they treated him well and all that kind of thing. And he sparred with Tyson Fury and he also sparred with Huey. And apparently they were going hell for leather in sparring. I remember Dillian Whyte talking in interviews after those spars, saying, yeah, we're not playing with each other in there. And Dillian Whyte seemed to insinuate that he got the better of their last spar. But, sparring is sparring. I don't want to say sparring means nothing because sometimes it does mean something. But it is different than being in a professional fight because you don't know the circumstances in which a spar took place. Sometimes you can be tired and the other guy's not tired in a spar. You might have done 15 hill sprints and the other guy's fresh. And then you're going into a spar. Obviously, the other guy's going to have more energy than you. You might have sparred 7-8 rounds already and the guy's getting in and he hasn't sparred any rounds. He's going to be fresher than you. You might have a niggle. You might have some kind of sickness. You might not be in shape and there's all kinds of things, all kind of different factors you have to take into account when it comes to sparring. And on top of that, you're wearing big 16, 18 or 20 ounce gloves if you're a heavyweight, headgear. It's a totally different situation than a professional fight. So it's not always indicative of what would happen, in a real fight in a ring. So anyway, let me know how you feel about everything I've highlighted and discussed in this video. It's happening. I'm out.